It's House of the Dragon time again, and I have some of the older episodes still to cover. And I've come to a realisation about this show, and now I've seen it, I can't unsee it. And that realisation is that I find the show very depressing now, and if that was something that I was interested in getting more of, I could just turn on the BBC. So I've been thinking about when I started to feel differently about the show, and why, because I don't think I felt this way from the start. So bear with me for a moment. I thought about it for a while, and I think I've pinned it down. I've liked the show markedly less since the time skip between episodes 5 and 6. It's when they changed actresses for Alicent and Rhaenyra. Since that point, the show has been an endless cavalcade of tragedy and misery that just gets progressively worse. Don't get me wrong, in episodes 1 to 5 there were dark moments, but they were balanced in part by Emily Carey playing young Alicent and her portrayal of a quite sweet and dutiful young woman, and Millie Alcock playing young Rhaenyra. That was the last time anyone in the show had any fun. And even when she had fun, it was effing her own uncle. And then there was her and Sir Criston. At least it was something positive to add a bit of balance to the darkness of the show. Since that transition, there's not much in the way of love, not much in the way of friendship, no humour whatsoever. There's just nothing positive. Nobody in the show seems to like anybody else, and I'm not sure I like any of them either. The characters that were positive before episode 5 changed to be negative as well. Everyone in it seems to hate their own lives. With how bleak the story's got, it's a surprise anyone in it is still alive. In the real world, the characters will be forming a conga line to the top of a tower to throw themselves out of a window. In Game of Thrones, let's face it, Tyrion hardly had it easy. He was born with dwarfism. His sister and father hated him for the death of his mother during his birth. A lot of people hated him just because of his family name. And he had more fun than the people in House of the Dragon. He just drank a lot of wine, spent a lot of money on prostitutes to be happy, and despite all that, he still found love twice. Even Varys was more positive than the people in House of the Dragon, and he didn't manage to make it through boyhood without getting his knackers chopped off, and he was less of a buzzkill than the Hot D crew. The guy that did it didn't even have the courtesy to leave him with a penis, and even he had a sunnier disposition than these miserable sods in House of the Dragon. I'm trying to do a retrospective of the show Babylon 5 because I wanted to do a more positive review, and in comparison it's so much better balanced than House of the Dragon. By comparison, the visual effects in Babylon 5 are far worse. The costumes are worse. Some of the acting is extremely shaky, but where Babylon 5 wins out is on story and having a far more balanced tone. Babylon 5 had moments of genuine humour, close friendships, love to balance the tragedy that was there. It's like the writers of House of the Dragon are in need of either a hug or an intervention, because since episode 5 it's all death, funerals and uncle fucking, and later a version of cockfighting with specially sharpened children. But we'll get to that, boy will we get to that. It's frankly getting to the stage where I just want some of the characters to be happy. I mean, poor Alicent. First of all, her father marries her off to a much older man who she doesn't love. She's lost her best friend, her sons are tools, then her husband is bedridden and ill. Surely no one would begrudge her finding a young man to pound a massive smile onto her face once in a while. She's the queen. Show, are you really trying to tell me that she can't find anything to make herself happy? Maybe some new shoes. That seems to work for a lot of women, but no. The best company she can apparently get is Larys and his creepy foot fetish. Anyway, back to the show, and Daemon gets some dragon eggs that one of the dragons had laid. And enjoy his creepy ass smile, because that's the closest I think that we get to someone being happy for the next 3 episodes. He goes back to Dragonstone, and the princess's kids are learning High Valyrian from Phil Daniels, who's an English actor, musician and singer playing the Maester. You may remember him singing in the 1994 song Park Life by the band Blur. Just the strangest people turn up in the casting of this show. Rhaenys sends a letter to Rhaenyra warning what Corlys's brother will try to do, that being to remove Rhaenyra's son as the heir to Driftmark, so the Princess Rhaenyra and Matt Damon go to King's Landing where the succession to Driftmark will be decided. And it's all a bit premature. It'll be a bit awkward if Corlys survives after all this. He's not even dead yet, and they're arguing the will, dividing up his property, and given the chance, would probably be checking him for gold teeth. In King's Landing, the Queen is told that her eldest son has forced himself on a serving girl, and I'm finding it hard to believe that her kids have turned out like this. It's a stretch, and they haven't really sold me on it. Alicent was so sweet and dutiful. How have her kids ended up like this? So Alicent goes to see her rapist son, and he's completely unapologetic. This character doesn't make any sense. Why would he treat the princess's sons like playthings? They outrank him. Rhaenyra is heir to the throne, not Aegon. Her son is second in line, not Aegon. So Alicent pays off the girl and gives her a drink to abort the pregnancy. And dear God, show, leave it alone. You're obsessed. It's wall-to-wall abortion, pregnancy and giving birth with none of the love, passion, feeling, sex to go with it. House the Dragon showrunners, can you just point on the doll to where the US Supreme Court decision on Roe vs Wade touched you? Rhaenyra and Daemon go to see the king, who is now depressingly bedridden, and they now have multiple children. 2 maybe it appears, and a 3rd on the way, and all that happened in another time skip off camera. Now, you have quite a good story at your core, House the Dragon. I'd just quite like to, see some of it. Can you maybe do more of the story just for me, on camera, and ideally well lit enough for me to be able to see what's going on? But it seems that in my negative feelings about the show, I'm firmly in the minority, because many people seem to be loving this show, and I will admit it's good to hear the Game of Thrones music again. I could tell the show was back, at least in part, when I was around someone that I know, and while they were mashing potatoes, I caught them whistling the Game of Thrones theme tune again. Now, I have quite enjoyed the show, but I do seem more critical about it than most. And it is a standout among the current crop of TV and film, but in truth, I think it just looks taller because it's standing in a crowd of midgets. If I compare it to the all-time greats, in terms of story, it's just okay. I already touched on this next part in part 1 of the review. I was ragging on this what I thought was a bad training fight scene, and I thought it'd be illustrative to show you something that I think is good in comparison. So here we have the training fight scene. Note how ponderously slow it is. How there's a cut after at most 1 or 2 attacks that breaks up any kind of fluidity in the fight scene. How the choice of weapons and clothing makes no sense for a training fight. And here we have the opening fight from the 2020 South Korean film, The Swordsman. On the whole, the film is pretty good. The first half is very good, but the film deteriorates into silliness in the second half. Note the speed and precision of the choreography. The innovative use of sweeping camera shots, the constant feeling of motion. That's what I would like the fight scenes in Game of Thrones to look like. But sadly, what we do get is actors fighting like they're in heavy armour, even when they aren't. I'm also not sure how nearly getting your unprotected head smashed in with a mace is good training for a dragon rider. And this is also a problem for Sir Kristen's character. Aemond has been written as being this reckless, but Kristen hasn't. Him and the Queen, as they have been written, would never consent to this kind of stupidity. His core motivation is supporting the Queen against Rhaenyra at this point, so risking Aemond's life goes against Kristen's core motivations, because if Aemond is hurt or killed in training, it helps Rhaenyra.
Could you make me a cup of tea, please, Stephanie?